Thank you for joining us for another episode of Team Lift Presents Rodical Thinking.
All right, everybody, man. Thanks for coming back for another episode of Rodical Thinking. I am your host this fine evening, Roderick McDaniel. And once again, I'm joined in the studio via the magic of the internet and Discord by Reed Griffin. What's going on, buddy?
Hi.
Oh, God.
K-pop stars are back.
Oh, gosh. I hate you so much.
Even though you can't see it, but, you know.
What's going on, dude?
Oh, not much, dude. Listening to songs I don't think I've ever actually fully listened to just for funsies.
Yeah, and people don't know what we're talking about, but when we were doing the mic test to record tonight, Reed over and over just kept saying, "It's going down for real." And that was all. He just kept singing that for the entire mic test. And it was just truly disturbing. And I was like, what are you even freaking singing? I don't even know what you're singing right now. But yeah, that was... So you're actually listening to the song for the first time?
No, I exited out of it. I was like, oh, that's enough of that. I did link you to it, so you can check it out later if that's what you want to do. I just like that beat, though, man. That beat is fresh.
I will check the beat out, but yeah, that song's already annoying, and all I've heard you do is sing it, so...
Well, what's ridiculous is if you look at, you know, I have two screens going on here. One's got, you know, all of my notes and everything for what we're about to talk about. But then on my other screen, it's Facebook, the original Power Rangers cast, my email, the evolution of Tom Clancy's The Division, and it's going down for real, all on one tab. So if that makes any sense about where my psyche is normally, there you go.
Bro, we really may suffer from ADHD. Because that is, I don't even want to tell you what my tabs are, but they're all over the map. Okay.
Bro.
What?
Hold on. I'm going to send you this picture. Oh, my God.
You do know we're in the process of recording a show, right?
But it's so worth it. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Anyways. Yeah,
showtime. Let's kind of focus. Just like, do we need to just stop this so you could go have a moment and just come back later, maybe tomorrow, and do this? What's going on with you?
I mean, it's whatever.
Oh, gosh. So, there was a thing. You kind of hit me with it. I wanted to talk to you about it.
Okay.
Mostly is because, I don't know, if anybody knows you really well, they kind of know you, not as bad as you used to, but you really seem to be a conspiracy theory buff.
Dude, there was a good stint I delved way too far in there for way too long. Like, I'm not gonna say like Alex Jones style, but it was pretty close. Like, I wasn't like, there's fluoride in the water. You know, the government is gonna kill us all. There is no two-party system. I mean, it wasn't that far, but it was borderline. I mean, if it made sense and there was actual backing behind it, yeah, you know, I would definitely be down for it. But yeah, conspiracy theories, I'm about them. That's why I like shameless self-plug. The Blake Shepard interview we had at IckyCon. Go check it out. Go check it out if you haven't checked it out yet. Anyways, that's why I like Blake, dude, because like straight up, dude's all about the conspiracy theories. Throws it in. He does the research. He throws it into his own anime. So I mean, for me, I was like, got to check that out. So, anyways, shameless plug.
Dude, that is true. He did talk on it, and I remember you just getting so hyped when he said that.
Yes.
Well, basically, these last few weeks, you and I have been going back and forth on this subject, and we've talked about it enough that I finally just said, hey, you know what? This should probably be an episode. We should just, you know, quit talking about it and be about it and do an episode based on what we're going to get into tonight. And it's going to be on probably one of the most popular conspiracy theories recently, the Mandela Effect. How familiar are you with it?
I mean, it's been a while since I've kind of messed with it. There was, when everybody first started kind of freaking out about it, I remember messaging one of my friends, and I was like, dude, what does this mean? Like, blah, 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 like losing my mind. And I was like, dude, what? He's like, you're a little bit over the line crazy at the moment, dude. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. But like I'm vaguely familiar with it still. But
Okay, so you know about it. You're familiar with it. How much do you know about false memory syndrome?
that one I do not know anything about. Let's see here.
Well, let me go ahead and tell you what it means. So basically, false memory is like a psychological phenomena where a person recalls something that did not happen. Okay. It's often considered regarding childhood sexual abuse. So it was initially it was investigated by like a psychological pioneers, Pierre Janet and Sigmund Freud. Freud wrote about it back in I can't remember when he first came up with it, but he discussed like repressed memories of childhood sexual trauma in relation to hysteria. I'll have to get the dates on that. But I know in 1974, according to my notes, Elizabeth Loftus has since her debuting research project in 1974 has been the lead researcher in memory recovery and false memories. Okay. So the reason I'm talking about false memory syndrome is because there is a thing going on where people believe something that happened that may never have happened, and it happens on such a large scale that it now has a name. Okay. And let's say, like, I'll give you a perfect example. The false memory syndrome and the reason the Mandela effect go hand in hand is in research now. I'll give you the most popular one, the Bernstein Bears. You remember those bears?
Dude, I used to play there was a coloring game and stuff like that they had on PC like way back in the 90s. So I'm familiar with it. That's where I was like, man, I could have swore it was EIN, not AIN.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
So I grew up, I'm 47. So I was born in 71. So to me, I always thought it was Berenstein. I don't remember Berenstain.
I don't either. I mean,
so it's one of the most popular false memory syndrome. It's like a false memory, and it's shared by multiple people. And it's really a weird thing. I know this is kind of weird because today's show is going to just delve into the mind and how it works. So I'm going to lead you on this really, really weird journey. So another one, and I don't know if you're familiar with this one, Sinbad, the comedian, black guy. Mm-hmm. You're familiar with him? Yeah. All right. And then there were people who believe he starred in a movie called Shazam.
Yeah.
All right. And people were like, yeah, he was a genie in this movie. Now, Sinbad said he was never in the movie. All right.
No lies. I remember watching that movie. Hold on, dude. No. Now I gotta search this. Yes. IMDb.
Yeah, so check this out. What you're going to find is a 1996 film called Shazam, starring Shaquille O'Neal.
I remember that one.
And he was the genie. Sinbad said he never did that movie, and he says that he did have a thing where he was wearing a genie costume during a TV presentation of Sinbad the Sailor movies in 1994, but he never starred as a genie in a movie called Shazam.
I could have swore that I remember watching that as a kid. Like, I remember because there was one part where like he had these like little golden sparkle things come from his hand for doing something. I typed that in and like automatically it starts talking about all that stuff.
Okay. Thank you. Now, this is probably where this is going to get a little weird. And if you're listening, I know people are listening to this right now and they're going, say what? Yeah, according to the research, it has never been Bernstein. I will go to my grave believing it was Bernstein and they changed it to Berenstain. But according to this, it was always Bernstein. It was always Bernstein. I don't believe it, but I'm just saying. But the one that gets me is I never knew about the Shazam movie I knew about Kazam, but I didn't know about a Shazam, and I didn't realize that many people thought of it.
Yeah, like I didn't know, dude, you just really jacked my day up. See, this is why I hate talking about this exact subject right here because like we said in the last episode, I've had pretty bad concussions. So like my memory's not the greatest sometimes. And so like when we start talking about this, I'm like, am I crazy or is this like real? I was scrolling through and I found one. The one that was really popular during that too was the Luke, I am your father, where it's no, I am your father. And so like a lot of people are like, no, I remember it being this in the movie, or I remember it being this. I'm like, I don't even remember any of that.
Yeah, see, and it's really crazy. Well, okay, let me go ahead and tell you another one. This is where the name the Mandela Effect comes from, okay? In 2010, self-described paranormal consultant Fiona Broom basically coined the phrase the Mandela Effect. Okay, and here's what it is. It was in reference to a false memory she reports of the death of South African leader Nelson Mandela in the 80s when he was in prison, and which she claims is shared by perhaps thousands of other people. And that's where she kind of got into this whole thing about alternate realities as an explanation. But people basically, like experts, just kept saying, nah, it's just false memories shaped by similar factors affecting multiple people, such as social reinforcement of incorrect memories or false news reports and misleading photographs influencing the formation of memories based on them. Okay. So that's just a lot of talk to say thousands of people are wrong. Now, here's where I'm going to take this a step further. I was told about this one, and I kept saying, no, he was very much alive. I said, Chris Rock does a comedy routine about him getting out of jail and divorcing his wife. He was in prison for 40 years. He gets out of prison, and he can only stay married for 1 month.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so it was a very popular comedy routine, but I told people something. I said, what I noticed is everybody that thought he died in jail, I just started asking a small percentage of my friends. All the black guys knew that he had survived. Like, not one of them thought he died in jail. Why? He was like a black superhero to us.
the original Black Panther, right?
Yeah, we kept you knew what was going on with Nelson Mandela at all times as a black child growing up. So it was weird, because he stood up to the system and they jailed him. So it was like, but I have several, not just one. It'd be different if it was one or two or even just 3 friends that were white that said, yeah, he died in jail. No, it's a bunch of them that thought that.
Well, but then again, you got to think too, depending on their age too, they may have been one of those like, hey, I was told this, I never did the research. Mm-hmm. Depending. I can attribute some of that to that.
Exactly. Well, here's where this gets interesting. Okay. So I'm leading into this to take you on this journey, kind of get you thinking about the whole narrative of conspiracy theories and the Mandela Effect. Okay. And how mass people can hear something and then just believe it to be true. Mm-hmm. I think this is really interesting when we're in a point in our lives where since the election, we've been dealing with the narrative of fake news.
Very true.
Like it's become like you keep hearing, the President Trump is always like, fake news, fake news, fake news. That's fake news. And then you kind of keep catching him going, bro, you're lying. This is not fake news. You just keep saying it's fake news. And people believe him just because he says it. And so I just like this whole thing about false memories and shaping people's memories based on a narrative of repeating a falsehood. We're watching it play out right now at this point in society on a global scale. Did I just break you?
No, I had a totally different thought that doesn't go with this this platform we're going with that I was going to tell you later, but I was formulating it. Sorry. It totally threw me off. I'm sorry.
Oh, wow. You just kind of shut down right there. I said, did I break him? What's going on?
Yeah, it kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, what do you think about this? I mean, what's your opinion?
I mean, about fake news?
In the whole thing about, is the Mandela Effect basically the product of years of fake news, and it just people have been manipulated into believing one thing and not researching it?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen that a handful of times, having conversations with people about any type of political subject or anything that is of quote unquote conspiracy theory related. People don't know. They don't do the research. They don't look into it. They just see what they see on Facebook or what their friends tell them. And 9 times out of 10, that ends up being quote unquote fact, when in reality it's really not. I mean, now depending on this is a whole battle you could have with anybody of, well, you know, I follow CNN, or I follow Fox News, or I'm Vice News, or Al Jazeera, or RT, or whatever. Each platform is going to have their own political agenda that they're going to push no matter what. I mean, that's pretty inevitable, and it has been very much so noticed, I think, by the common person out there. I mean, everybody kind of starting to see that, hey, Fox News is this way, and CNN is this way, Washington Post and New York Times. Like, some people are going to start falling into those deals and being like, oh, I knew this publication was garbage, and it's a terrifying place to be when you're not sure what's being reported to you as fact, or you have very little insight to go look. I like using live leaks. I know that's not a very great source for news, but it does give an interesting opening narrative to where certain things are. So when the whole Syrian conflict kicked off, during Arab Spring deal, like, there wasn't too many news publications that were talking about it at the time. There was a handful that would be like, oh, so many people died here, and that was it. Like, that was, you would listen to the BBC, and they were like, 30 people were killed in some place in Syria. Nobody batted an eye. But at the same time, you could go watch the independent news sources or the people that were recording videos from Syria to show, hey, this is what's actually going on. And so I kind of like the Live Leaks platform just for that fact. Now, it's not always great. There's not the greatest content on there. It's kind of a garbage website in a sense, but there's some good reporting that you can find in there by independent sources. Because everybody will say, oh, well, the Associated Press. If you look at just about every publication, everybody uses the Associated Press. I mean, it's just kind of how it is. But that's kind of my opinion on that.
Interesting. Man, but here's the thing. So I go through this, and it is like, there's lists, so many lists of examples of the Mandela Effect. Now, some of them were just goofy, okay?
My favorite one here that I first noticed was Mandela Effect. Some people swear the Red Hot Chili Peppers released a decent album. Bam.
Wow. Wow.
Oh, that was my favorite one so far. But continue, sorry.
Well, okay, so we know the one about the Bernstein Bears. The one that you were talking about with Luke, Luke, I'm your father, is not what he said. It's, no, I'm your father. That was what, and so you see a bunch of these and people say, well, it could have been a misremembered line from the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then there are other ones that I just can't think of. Like, I don't know how they come to this one. So I'm going to give you the one that threw me off. Queen, very famous rock band. I think we all know at least 3 songs from Queen. If I started playing any of these three songs, people are going to know it's Queen. If I played Bohemian Rhapsody, if I turned on Another One Bites the Dust, and if I started playing We Are the Champions, you don't have to ask who that is. You already know who it is. Okay?
Yeah.
Those three songs. That's it. Everybody know, oh, he's listening to Queen. But here's the thing. One of their songs is part of the Mandela Effect controversy. We Are the Champions.
No.
Yes. So, I swear before the Lord in heaven, I always thought the song said, 'cause we are the champions of the world at the end, right?
Yeah.
Do you know
Don't tell me it's different. Don't you dare.
There is no of the world at the end of that song.
Bull. I have that on tape. I have to go find like an actual physical tape. I'm gonna have to go find that.
Yeah.
It's a lie.
Yeah, hey bro.
Lie.
Blew me away. Messed me up. Messed me up.
I'm looking at the lyrics right now. Yeah, there it is, right there. It's on the freaking because we are the champions of the world. It's right there. I'm looking at it. I sees it.
Yeah, I want you to actually go, if you get a chance, go listen to the song. Because according to this, that is not in the song.
See, I think some of these people, just kind of like, hey, we're gonna throw random things out here. Hold on, right here. Dun 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 dun. There it is. 1 minute and 11 seconds on this video. Bam. Found it.
At the end of the song, there is no other world, bro.
Oh, in the chorus. I'm talking about the chorus. I didn't know you were talking about the end of the song.
You know, like when the song ends, when that song ends, there's the part where it says, 'cause we are, it does not say of the world at the end of the song. And I thought that's how the song ended.
No. Okay, I thought you were talking about in the song itself. I was like, no, that is a lie. I know that one. No, but at the end of the song, no.
Really? I've always thought that part was... You know what I'm starting to think? It was used for commercials, and you know how commercials edit songs, chop them up to make them fit? I think during the 70s, that was used for a commercial, and that's why I believe that Of the World was the end of the song, is how it ends.
Well, and I just watched like the end of a live video of it, and because like Freddie Mercury does this crazy stage stuff, it's like dun dun, and that's it. And he just walks off the stage. But then again, you are correct with the commercial aspect of it. Like that kind of ends up being people remember that part, and it's easier as an audio technician to use that because there's 5 different ones you can pull from. Mm-hmm. As a technician, I can pull from 5 different ways they did the chorus. So whichever one sounds best to me, I'll use. Whereas the end, it's just like, dun, 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 everything just kind of fades out. And it's done.
Right.
But then again, depending in live settings he may have, I don't know. Queen was before my time, so.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I gave you that video down there in the bottom of the official lyric video. So whenever you can play that at some time at your
leisure. Will do.
You're welcome.
Okay, here's one. The Monopoly guy.
Oh, yeah. I vaguely kind of watched that one happen, but I don't remember that one too well.
Yeah, Rich Uncle Pennybags is his name. People believed he had a monocle, and according to Parker Brothers, or Milton Bradley, whoever the owners were, he did not. They say that people were confusing him with Mr. Peanut, the Planter's peanut mascot, who does have a monocle.
I will say, I think doesn't he have? Oh, what was that noise?
Probably me.
Yeah, that sounded like some bassy niceness. Anyways, like I don't remember him ever having a monocle. I was gonna say I think he may have one on one of the boxes, but maybe I'm wrong. And I'm looking at Monopoly boxes and I don't see it. Yeah, I don't see it.
Oh, I
don't ever remember him having the monocle.
Yeah, I don't either. Here's one. Did Forrest Gump say life was like a box of chocolates, or life is like a box of chocolates?
What?
Forrest Gump. Have you ever watched the movie?
Yeah. No, don't know. To me, it sounded like you just said the exact same thing.
No, I said two totally opposite things right there. Did he say life is like a box of chocolates, or did he say life was like a box of chocolates? Did he say is, or did he say was?
Man, I don't remember. I know the most common one is.
Right. But actually what he says in the movie was. Yeah.
Oh, that changes like everything.
Yeah, he was speaking in a past tense.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. I didn't think about that one. I hadn't heard that one.
Here's one that messed me up. One of my favorite movies, Silence of the Lambs. Love Hannibal Lecter that whole time. First time I saw the movie, yes. Everybody remembers the first time you see Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter. Everybody says the most famous line from the movie was, "Hello, Clarice," right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that does not exist in the movie?
No.
Never happened. Yeah, first time he meets her, he simply says, "Good morning." Yeah.
Is that from like from one of the newer movies though?
The original film.
No.
Broken.
Dude. Maybe we're just all stupid and we don't realize it. Yeah, like there's another one from like Snow White, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. Actually, it's supposed to be Magic Mirror on the Wall.
Yeah.
That one, I do remember that it is Magic Mirror on the Wall. Oh, fast food restaurants. Chick-fil-A with a hyphen between Chick, Phil, and A, with no K. But it's actually CHICK and then filet. Like, I should know that one because I actually just ate there recently, but I do not remember paying attention to it.
I've never paid attention to it, and I've always spelled it Chick, CHIC hyphen Phil, FIL hyphen capital A.
Oh, no, I wonder what my wonderful iPhone, this garbage thing, I wonder what it tries to autocorrect it to. That's the Lord's chicken.
That's what I call it. And here's the thing. When I call it the Lord's chicken, people know what I'm talking about.
What's funny is I type in chick, like CHICK, filet, and it gives me Chicagoland. Or chicken fail. Okay, we need to move on.
Yeah. But these are the things, man, that we deal with. So we got people that are running around like we believe a bunch of stuff to be like, oh my God, this is true and I know it. And we believe it with all of our heart and be wrong as hell.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what this came to. Like, I'm now at a point where, at 47, I thought I knew what was going on. I can honestly tell you right now, I don't know what the hell's real anymore.
Well, I mean, that's sorry, I'm dying. Yeah, no, that's where it gets interesting because, kind of some of the other stuff that we were talking about in the same week, I know it kind of jumps a little forward, but, I mean, hell, you can look into, like simulation argument or, super-symmetry or even just, conspiracy theories about the Large Hadron Collider, with CERN opening dimensions to different worlds and different dimensions or holes, I guess, in fact, because they want to, quote unquote, peek through the other side and see what's on the other side. It's an interesting way of doing things, depending on which community you're a part of. That can call for a lot of weird things. I think they're trying to prove the different dimensions. Mm-hmm. Is what some people are calling. There's some people that are saying, oh, they're trying to summon the devil. They're opening gates to hell. Now there have been like some weird scientists and stuff like that people have said they have talked to. I mean, now this starts jumping into like coast to coast type thing. So I mean, take that for what it's worth. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing personally. I've never really followed what the Hadron Collider does. I know it just shoots particles at like super high speeds and smashes them into the other ones. I do remember that dude that just died, really smart guy, Stephen Hawking, talking about, hey, you guys probably shouldn't do this. You don't know what the consequences are. But hey, I mean, they could create a black hole. That's cool. And then it would suck the Earth up and we're all gone from there. So none of this would even matter. But it depends on who you talk to. I mean, there's some interesting theories behind it. You can go all the way into looking at the statue that they have out front of the building at the CERN headquarters is supposed to be Shiva and her death dance, which is supposed to be some omen to the end of the world, and that they're opening portals to hell. And when you start looking at some of them, it starts sounding like the UAC and Doom, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of funny at the same time, but it's kind of scary. Depending on how you look at it. But they say some people are trying to figure out time travel. I mean, if you guys have your own opinions on some of these theories or stuff that's kind of stumped you, put them down in the comments section below.
Yes, I definitely want to get to them and read them and kind of talk to people about these. Now, I'm glad you brought this up, because when we start talking about the whole idea of supersymmetry and supergravity and superstring theory, I mean, let's just kind of look at this. That's, if you go down this rabbit hole of the Mandela Effect and then false memories syndrome, and you start looking into it, you start seeing people, the conspiracy theories start saying it's because of what they've done with the Hadron Super Collider, that it's creating these basically anomalies in time. Okay. Then that's where you start seeing things about the simulation theory,
I love simulation argument. So much fun.
Really?
Yeah, dude. So Nick Bostrom from Oxford University a couple of years ago came out with a paper for one of his, I guess I don't know what you call it, like a thesis paper for his doctorate or something like that. Came up with this theory, in a sense, of are we living in a simulation? And so it kind of opens up the world into that there's three possibilities. One, that the human species is likely to go extinct before we get to the possibility of having technology to do such a thing of simulation argument. The second is that civilization is unlikely to run into a significant number of simulations because they don't push to it, or it's not something that's important to them. So like ancestral simulations or viewings aren't as popular in society at that time. Or the third is that we're living in a simulation and we don't know we're in a simulation. So where a lot of people start drawing the lines and start talking about it is they're like, oh, this is the Matrix, which is interesting in its sense. I mean, if you watch the original Matrix, they have the one scene where they're walking through the building and Neo's like, oh, that's weird. And they're like, what? And they're like, that cat, I just saw the same cat twice. And they're like, that they changed something in the system. And so that's where some people start trying to link Mandela Effect into the Hadron Collider into simulation argument that it doesn't matter, we're all in a simulation and it's not real. Well, I don't think Nick Bostrom was going to that effect with his paper, but that's where people have taken it. Simulation argument is interesting. It's an interesting point if you have your very artsy style friends that you that you hang out with. It's an interesting conversation to bring up because it opens up the door into religion. It opens up the door into what's that word I'm looking for? Anyways, it opens the door up for a lot of different conversation points, and that's what I like talking about it, because you could play devil's advocate with it, or you can play any number of sides with it. You know, you have 3 different ways you could choose from to play the conversation, and depending on who you're talking to. You know, I had an ex that I used to bring this conversation up with random people, or even her friends, because I just wanted to see what the intellectual level of these people were, like where they kind of stood. And she's like, I really wish you would not do that. She's like, it's stupid. I'm like, no, it's actually pretty interesting to think about. I mean, I don't believe that it's real, but at the same fact, it's interesting to talk to people and go, well, hey, why do you think it's a simulation? Do you think it is a simulation? Do you think that this is real or not real? Because there's a guy, Dr. James Gates Jr., who is a string theorist. He went through and found error-correcting codes within the cosmos that break down the pattern reflecting computer code. So what it's saying is it's indicating the fundamental particles that are in the universe and are zeros and ones, not in a random chaotic order that we would kind of figure that it was, but it's more or less a written out code in a sense that everything actually has its own place. It's not just random and jumbled up. A lot of people want to discredit it. He does have some interesting theories and some papers written on it. Dude's been doing it for like 30, 40 years. I mean, he's kind of the forerunner for supersymmetry.
Yep.
The only problem is that, actually, what's interesting about the whole thing is that we can't account for everything that's in space. So they can only account for a certain amount, and then they say, oh, the rest of it's dark matter, or it's some other type of space stuff that we don't know about. They don't really have a way to test it in a sense.
Well, let's hold on. Before you go too deep, let's just talk about this guy. So, Dr. Gates is, I know, people try to discredit what he's written about. But let's really break down who you're trying to discredit. Okay. So this guy, his doctoral thesis was the first at MIT on supersymmetry. Okay. He's a MIT graduate. He got his PhD in 1977. He got his BS in 73. He is, or was the Martin Luther King Jr. visiting scholar at MIT from 2010 to 2011, was a residential scholar at MIT's Simmons Hall. He is still working, in pursuing ongoing research into string theory, supersymmetry, and supergravity at the MIT Center for Theoretical Physics. This guy's no slouch. And before I will listen to somebody discredit him, you better have walked what he's walked before you try to discredit him to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and that's the thing. And I've read that where people are like, well, I don't think he's right. How can you not when he's pretty much the leading authority on it? Until you can disprove it, all you are doing is thinking. And I don't care about your thoughts. This guy's like, hey, here it is. He wrote the freaking, he co-authored Superspace, or 1001 Lessons in Supersymmetry, the first comprehensive book on supersymmetry. This guy is a leading authority in this thing. And like you say, out there on the cutting edge of science, and it's just like people are like, nah, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? He blew, I don't know if you watched this, he blew Neil Tyson, what's his name? Neil deGrasse Tyson or Heisen. Yeah. He blew his mind. I saw him on a video with Neil Tyson, and he was talking about that whole thing about how when they were doing this study, they could see patterns of ones and zeros in the infiniteness of space. And like, you can't, it's almost like computation. And he was like, so what are you saying? Like he said, I'm not saying this is a simulated reality. I'm just saying we see a patterns of ones and zeros. It's something we can't discredit it. And so that leads me to something I didn't know about it till I started looking at it. But there's a thing called computationalism. Mm-hmm. And it's basically a philosophy of mind theory where basically people say that cognition is a form of computation. And it's like, I guess when we start talking about the whole like simulation theory or simulation hypothesis is that virtual people would have to be able to operate in that system. Even though they were artificial consciousness, they would not be able to tell the difference between reality and virtual reality. Basically like saying, if we were virtual beings inside of a game right now, we would know.
The Matrix.
This is our world. This is our everyday understanding. But at the same time, how do we know there's not some? I mean, it's just, here's where I get it. Like the whole idea, if we say, okay, so we are all simulated beings, okay, inside of a giant computer program.
Yeah.
Then people have to question everything because I could unravel their thoughts on God, their thoughts on philosophy, their thoughts on who they are as a person and their religion. I could unravel everything you think you knew about yourself based on that one theory.
That's why I love talking about simulation argument, because it always comes back into this of supersymmetry. And that's where it gets interesting, because if somebody's like, yeah, I like space, I like science and stuff. Well, let's talk about it then. That's why I like it, because it opens up, that's the word I was looking for earlier was philosophy. It opens up this nice world that you can challenge people and ask them questions. And you really get, I mean, even just on a short, quick conversation with somebody, if you're at a wine party or something like that, or you're just drinking beers with dudes or whatever, you bring it up, you get to know somebody on a deeper level very quickly in that conversation. And that's why I like it, because you get to figure out who people are. Not the, oh, I'm a Christian, oh, I'm an atheist, oh, I'm a musician, oh, I'm this. You get down to the brass tacks of who someone is really quick with it. And that's why I like it, because I can tell pretty quick if I'm going to like you or not in that conversation just based off that, which is kind of crappy way to do it, but it seems to have worked so far.
Mm-hmm. But bro, that's the thing, man. It's like here's my thing, and this is a side note, and that's probably controversial that I say this. I don't trust people that can't argue. That if you've never really thought about why you believe in a God or why you believe in God, how much have you really experienced your spiritual walk? And I say that not to knock people. I'm just saying that you have to be able to understand why did I choose to believe what I believe? And if you can't explain that to people or articulate it, at least even on a fourth grade level, it really means that you haven't really put a lot of thought into your spiritual walk or the spiritual path that you chose. You just did it. Whether you did it because that was what your parents told you to do, or that's how your family was and you just blindly drank the Kool-Aid, great. That's great, but being able to say, oh, I'm in this relationship with, Jesus or God, that's great, but why? Why did you make that decision? What was it that led to it? I think everybody should be able to have to tell why they got to that point in their life, or at least be able to explain it to someone.
Exactly. No, I agree with that.
And so that's the whole thing, like, with simulation theory is like, now, if I start poking holes in your walk with God or your religious outlook or belief, based on the idea that, what if that's a created concept that we created for ourselves?
Well, that's where it gets interesting with supersymmetry. Supersymmetry and string theory is there's some physicists out there that are like, if we can prove this the way that we're trying to prove it and how we're going about it, this can change everything. This changes religion. This changes everything we know about space, about what we knew about the Earth, about the human body, everything. Like that's where it starts getting really interesting about the whole thing. And that's the one hard part about the string theory world is it's not credited. There's guys that are super brilliant in this, but the way a lot of physicists and the science community in general look at string theorists are just as that, theorists. They're like, you're not a physicist. You don't have anything to do with science. You're doing philosophy. And they're like, no, we're actually trying to prove this. And there's some people that are like, no, you're just... Basically, the way to look at it is string theorists in the science community are the joke of the science community. Because it's taken them 30 to 40 years to finally get to the point where they are now with trying to figure this stuff out. And they still can't prove it. And that's the hard part, is because it's an interesting subject, where, string theory is basically... To make a little bit more sense, because I don't think we really touched on it too much, is the theory of quantum gravity. So what they're saying is that they're replacing point-like particles into like one-dimensional objects and calling them strings. And so what it is we have the three basic components. You have electrons, the nucleus composed of neutrons and protons. So what they're trying to say is further inside of that are made of smaller particles known as quarks. And quarks are supposed to be like truly elementary type thing as far as we know and all this. But there's no real proof of it. Basically, what the easiest way to understand it is if you put it under extremely powerful microscope, basically you're just going to see continuing loops of strings upon strings upon strings upon strings. The whole Earth and everything is made of strings. And so that's kind of the basic concept of it. I mean, it goes a lot deeper than that, but where you can get into real interesting theories in science fiction, to where, like, if you figured out frequency, which is actually an interesting one, especially in the conspiracy theory world, is ELF, which is extremely low frequency waves. And so what you can do with these, the Earth emits a certain amount of a low frequency, and everything does. The human body, your dog, your computer, everything has a certain frequency that it operates at. So what they're saying is there's certain government, quote unquote, government agencies that are working with pumping areas full of extremely low frequencies at so low of a frequency it causes massive depression and can cause suicide in people, because of the frequency level changes your mind's way of operating. Like, your body doesn't operate correctly, your mind doesn't operate correctly. And if you go too high, it causes complete chaos and people go absolutely bonkers. Now, that's just a theory. I don't know if there's any true facts behind that, but that's one theory behind that. So that's where some people start trying to link that in with the string theory deal. It's a convoluted mess.
It is.
When you start jumping into the conspiracy theory world, everything is linked. It doesn't matter what it is. Almost every single bad thing is linked. You can do this, and this is this, and this, and you go over here and you listen to that, and this over here is that. It's literally a rabbit hole that is never ending. Like, I know some people that are so far into it, dude, that are just mentally, they are gone. You see them in public, and you're just like, if you see them in public, you're just like, I want to stay away from that guy. But back to the string theory part, that's kind of the point. There's some people that are talking that with ELF and string theory, that if you change the frequency of certain pump something full of a frequency, and if string theory is correct, by theory, I should be able to, at certain frequencies, be able to pass my hand through a table. Therefore, I am part of the table. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But they're concerned that if you do that, when you go through, how much of your actual physical body are you leaving behind inside that table? And so, like, trying to pass through a wall, like, how much of my body do I leave passing through a wall in this ELF string theory world? And so it kind of makes you think about, like, the Men Who Stare at Goats kind of deal, the movie, passing through walls and stuff. So it's kind of funny to think about in a sense, and I don't believe any of it's really true. I mean, string theory seems to have a little bit more of a weight than some of the other theories that are out there, especially concerning like simulation argument. But if you listen to Nick Bostrom's actual like conversation piece he has, he says he doesn't know. He's like, it could be real, it could not. Watching him and his demeanor, I don't think he believes in it. I think it's an interesting concept that he came up with and was like, hey, I'm going to run with it.
Yeah, here's my thing, because I can break it down. Like, I had to go, before we did the show, at a basic level, and I'm going to try to do this, 4th grade, string theory for 4th graders. This is what I'm going to do right now. So, anybody listening, if we told you, hey, what is the world made up of? Most people listening would say atoms, okay? We learned that in 4th grade science. And we know that the 3 basic components of any atom are electrons, neutrons, and protons, okay? And then where this gets weird is string theory says, now inside the neutrons and protons are smaller particles. And that's where quarks exist. All right. That's like the most subatomic particle of a neutron and a proton, the tiniest thing. And so then they start saying, okay, so there are 12 basic building blocks. Okay. And I say, okay, now we're starting to get crazy. So they were like, there's 6 quarks, and of those quarks, there's up, down, charm, strange, bottom, and top. And at some point, I don't know, that just sounded like Tinder aspects for dating.
I'll be glad I'm not the only one that was thinking that.
Yeah, man, because when you start telling me up, down, charm, strange, bottoms, and tops, I'm like, I have a gay friend and he used all 6 of these words in trying to get a date. So I'm just like, those are quarks, okay? And then a proton, for instance, is made up of 2 up quarks and 1 down quark, okay? Then the other 6 things outside of the quarks are called leptons, and these include the electrons and its 2 heavier siblings, the muon and the tauon, as well as 3 neutrinos. So now this is where it starts getting crazy. So it was cool when we were just dealing with 3 things, okay? You're telling me protons, neutrons, electrons. I'm like, okay, great. I understand that. 3 things. Then you say, but those 3 things are made up of smaller things. And now you got to start understanding what leptons, muons, tauons, neutrinos, and quarks are. And I'm like, done. I tap out. I'm done. And so, I mean, like, fascinating science. I'm not going to pretend that I understand all of it. I just know that what gets me is that when we're starting to look at, one, conspiracy theorists are getting smarter.
Oh, yeah.
Because they are starting to pull in so much heavy science. I'm not even sure that some of the guys that aren't the scientists aren't the ones making up this stuff now.
Well, if you listen to Coast, yeah.
Because, man, it's some weird stuff. It's some weird stuff. Like, but it kind of got me when I just kind of started looking into it. Like, it started with, hey, reason to conspiracy theories. And we've talked about Mandela Effect. And then I started, just to look into it. I just wanted to kind of research it some more. And the more I start kind of wanting to research it, the more I started realizing it's a rabbit hole. And you can go real deep down this rabbit hole if you're not careful. Because the more you start going down it and say, well, I'm just going to research the Mandela effect. Well, then you start seeing people say, well, it's because of supersymmetry and the Hadron Collider. And then you go, what? And then you go start researching that. Then once you research that, you start looking into, string theory and slamming these particles into each other and what they're trying to figure out. And then you start going deeper down into that. Then you start, and it starts branching out. And now you're next thing you know, you swear that your microwave's talking to you and that the transformers are real because you don't know anymore. And that's where I was just like, this is getting crazy.
It gets worse than that because, like, especially if you start looking into the Hadron Collider, you can fall into this whole other world of reptilian races, hollow Earth theory. I mean, there is so much crap that you can fall into that you have no idea what's going on. But here's what
I think it does. It discredits actual science. Like, I think there's legitimate science out there, right? I really think there are scientists doing legitimate scientific study and work. But all of a sudden, we start seeing this, where this legitimate scientific work starts getting mentioned in conspiracy theories, and then it almost takes credibility away from the scientific work while leading credibility to the conspiracy theory because of the science that's behind it. It's a really weird catch-22.
I would disagree. I think the community in general will discredit conspiracy theorists anyways. I mean, most people do. Most common people see conspiracy theorists. You get labeled that. Most people aren't going to believe you on a lot of things.
Yeah.
I think that the science is too factually based to say that it's not something else. I mean, depending on which aspect we're looking at. I mean, when you start getting into like the dimensional aspect of string theory and all that, superstring theory, that's where it starts getting a little weird. I can see the discredit from most people and the conspiracy theorists. Most people are aware of the three dimensions that we currently, the third dimension that we occupy, and then the first and second dimensions. But where it starts changing is where string theorists start jumping into, hey, there's 10 dimensions, there's 11 dimensions, there's 26 dimensions. And depending on who you talk to and how they do their math, depends on the amount of different dimensions you can pull. Now, I'm not a leading expert in any of this. It's just something that, like, hey, this is something I did on a Saturday, or over the last couple of years, just following it for funsies. But like, that's where I think a lot of it starts getting discredited within its own community, is where they start making extravagant, crazy claims of there's 26 dimensions within our own universe. And I'm like, prove to me this. Like, that's why string theory is still a theory, because you can't prove it. Like, and I think string theory is interesting. I think there's a lot of weight behind it. I think they're missing a lot to it, but that's neither here nor there.
Mm-hmm.
But like, one thing that kind of makes it interesting that you can fall into to kind of continue on with the rabbit hole down simulations and supersymmetry and all that other stuff is what was that thing called? The Mandelbrot set, which that one I didn't know about till recently.
I just watched that video when you sent it to me.
Blew my mind, dude. I'd never heard of it, and I'm actually really surprised I never have. I'm not a math guy by any means. People that know me know that I am not the brightest crayon in the box, so the math part is not my deal. But the Mandelbrot set was kind of like, hey, they could never do it, and this is where it is interesting. The how do I put this? I don't know this guy's Benet Mandelbrot. I can't pronounce his first name. Anyways, he's the one that coined the term fractal sets, which are like a particular instance of numbers that equal out to infinity. So no matter what numbers you put in, it continually repeats perfectly into infinity. Like it continues and continues and continues. The greatest way to take it is like take a triangle, put a point, like draw another triangle on each point, and then from there draw 3 more triangles on each point, and 3 more triangles on each point, and 3 more triangles on each point, and you continue to do that until eternity. You can't. It doesn't end, and so they could never. This set that Benet came out with, that he figured out, was it's been in front of mathematicians' faces for centuries. And it's so simple, no one ever figured it out. The only time they ever figured it out was when I believe he worked for IBM, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
I think he got a job with IBM, but he was working with like new computers during like I guess like the 50s or 60s. I don't remember exactly, but he started looping these numbers through computations, and he created, this is where he came up with the Mandelbrot set, which is again fractal sets. That's what he coined it as. But what's interesting is like when you put it into like a digital world and actually have it to where the sets are digitized to like a pattern, the pattern continues and continues, like kind of like those weird spiraling shaped blobs that you see online, and they change, but it comes back to center, and it ends up being the same thing over and over and over. It's just a loop. Same concept within that. That's where you can take the Mandelbrot set and throw it back into Super-symmetry with Dr. James Gates, back into Nick Bostrom's simulation argument, and then you can jump it back into all the way back to Mandela Effect with the mind. It's all based on the mind and how you see it and what you want to do with it. You know, that's kind of the thing, is that out of all the things we've talked about, the only real factual thing that actually stands out is the Mandelbrot set. That's the only thing that actually is factual based on everything else. Everything else is just a change of the mind or something along those lines.
And I don't want to get into that whole thing, because you and I, we have a lot of what I call them believers. So friends that are believers in the Christian faith, and that what I have found very entertaining and very odd over the last couple of years are that people who I know are heavy Christian believers and people who I know are not so much believers in God or Christ and that whole thing, but believe in a theory that, you know, as I believe it, I am healed. You know, whatever my mind can achieve or believe, I can achieve. That kind of whole thing. And so there are those people that are like, you know, I could change my health just by believing that I'm healthy, you know. So it's when we start talking about the mind and that whole thing, that's where it starts kind of getting me into these weird theories, because I was like, I can screw somebody up with this. I have just enough information at my fingertips to be wrong and dangerous. That's really where I'm at.
That's the fun part of being at parties, dude. Because, like, you know, and like I was saying before, we started all this, you know, I when I first fell into like simulation argument and kind of what it was all about and blah, 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 you know, I was on this like philosophy kick anyways, as it was. And so I was like, you know what? Like, what if nobody exists? What if I don't exist? What if this world doesn't exist? And everything happens because it is a manifestation of my own consciousness saying, hey, this is the way it should be, which I don't believe. I don't believe that that's true in any respect, but it's kind of a weird thing to think about. Like, hey, this isn't going to happen because I haven't thought that it should be bad enough, so therefore it won't happen. You know, like, which I didn't know was already that exact deal was already a philosophy that had already been done centuries ago. You know, I thought it was like, I'm a genius. Until one of my friends told me, no, that's Rene Descartes. I was like, oh, that makes sense, which most people will know him for I think, therefore I am. And so that's kind of the the kind of push into that. That's where you can go. There's so much the mind can do and handle. And so when you start thinking, quote unquote, I think, therefore I am. Well, I mean, that's pretty interesting concept, because that's where you're kind of pushing a lot of super-symmetry and stuff like that, or even simulation argument even, like, is it real? Is it not real? So I don't know. I started falling into that wonderful world of, like, where does this go? Where does this, is this a real mental place? And when you bring it up to people, it's kind of, you can always fall back into philosophy from science, especially on the theoristic side. It's always going to fall back into philosophy every single time. I don't care what anybody says. As every single time I've watched any type of panel or listened to any type of intellectuals talk, it always falls back to philosophy every single time.
Yeah, man. So, see, it's... Dude, we just talked about this for an hour. We're over an hour strong on this subject. And here's the thing. What people don't realize about this is you and I just said before we start, I don't think we're going to get an hour talk out of this.
I know. I was looking at the time. I was like, man, I really didn't think we'd get this far.
I didn't either, man. I would call it quit, because where we are right now, it's just going deeper down the rabbit hole. I did think it was fascinating just because it kind of gives people an idea. This is really what yours and my conversations are like when we're not on this show. We really talk about stuff. Like we both are on the PS4, so we play video games a lot, and we'll just kind of let you guys know when we're online, we will open up a chat room and we're both playing games. I mean, we're not playing the deepest stuff in the well. Okay. I'm playing currently Lego City Undercover, and you were playing Wolfenstein. And these are not games that are bringing up these discussions. This is just what Reed and I talk about when we're playing these games.
Yes, exactly. Well, it depends. You need to play. I need to bring you the new Wolfenstein so you can check it out. We're not talking about games. This is not about games, so we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I do know there's some stuff I've heard about that game being amazing, and some discussion about alternate realities and race relations in those alternate realities. I've not heard a bad review of that game yet, but that's a whole nother show for a whole nother podcast. Exactly. Yeah, we do enough podcasts. We're not bleeding that into this one, but yeah, definitely. I'll talk to you about it off the show. Yes.
All right. But guys, man, we do appreciate you guys listening. Also, before we get out of here, I just want to thank everybody that listened to our first episode as it dealt with depression, and Reed and I talked about our own personal struggles with it, and, living with depression and overcoming depression. I've heard a lot of encouraging words. I've received a lot of encouraging letters from people, and thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I don't have words to articulate how appreciative I am of the words that you've reached out to us and contacted me either through Facebook Messenger or through email, or people that knew me that listened to the show texted me. Thank you for listening and supporting. Radical Thinking is just two guys working through life. That's all this really is at the end of the day. We're just talking about stuff that interests us. That we kind of question in reality sometimes. And, it just felt right. I felt that we needed to have a talk about depression. It's so many people are suffering from it, and we just don't talk about mental health. And I'm going to say this until they put dirt on me. If you are struggling, and it's hard to wake up every day, and it's getting harder to wake up every morning, and it's getting harder for you to come up with reasons to go on, reach out to us. Get help. Put light on your situation. You are not alone. You're not the first person that's ever dealt with depression. You will not be the last person that's ever going to deal with depression. But you can beat it. You can be on the other side of it. You can get through it. And I just need you to remember that if you don't remember anything else. There are people that love you, and you can get the help you deserve. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I'm not going to recap the show, but thank you, everybody, for listening and supporting what we're doing. And we're going to keep trying to bring you this stuff every week.
I'm okay with that.
Good deal, man. I'm gonna give you a preview. I'm working on a guess. I don't know when we're gonna have them, but I know you've done a lot of work with sex trafficking. You know, trying to help those victims, and you know some of the things that you've been dedicated to. I've met a young lady recently in my travels and conversations. You know, I don't meet strangers. The minute I meet a person, I just start talking to them. That told me a very scary story about how they almost ended up in the whole thing. And then there was another young lady who is a sex worker, and they both shared their story with me, and I'm working to bring them on the show. So we got some subjects coming up in the next couple of weeks that they're going to be tough to deal with, but I can't wait to get them on here.
Yeah, it's a very passionate subject for me as well, so I'm down to talk about this.
All right, brother. Well, man, it's always a pleasure, man. Appreciate you coming on the show. As always, man, nothing but love for you, bro. Nothing but love. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Oh, thank you. It's always fun.
All right. Well, guys, if you ever need us, you can reach out to us. You can reach me at roderickreadytoserve71@gmail.com. And Reed, they can reach you at djwren@live.com.
Yeah, DJWREN.
Yeah, DJWREN@live.com. Definitely, if you guys have questions for us, feel free to leave stuff down in the comment section on Podbean or on the YouTube channel. We're always willing to talk to you about whatever. If you have suggestions for the show or things that you want Reed and I to look into and discuss, hit us up. We're definitely willing to have the conversation with you. Appreciate it, and thank you so much for your support. You guys have a great night. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Rodical Thinking, a Team Lift production. Hit us up at GoTeamLift and at Coach Silky on Twitter.